Welcome to Down the Road. US Senator Kent Conrad, a former senator from the great state of North Dakota, is going to join us. We're going to talk to him about infrastructure. We're going to get a chance to visit with him about the budget, how we're going to pay for everything. And, of course, he knows Joe Biden as well as anyone. He served a lot of years with Joe Biden in the United States Senate. They were good friends, and so we'll talk to him about that. But Mike Nelson is good enough to come on with us. He's an Afghan veteran. So this man knows what it's like to be boots on the ground when it comes to it. And we want to get a chance to talk to him about the situation in Afghanistan. Mike, good to have you coming down the road with us.
Well, thanks. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
I have to ask you, when did you serve in Afghanistan?
So I did 2 deployments to Afghanistan, one in 2011 to 2012 and another one in 2014. And then shortly thereafter, I was working at in a headquarters where I was kind of had a role in planning from afar.
Okay. So, understanding Afghan, the Afghan soldiers and what's happening, did this surprise you?
Yes and no. I mean, the speed that it happened was obviously something that I think was pretty shocking. My partners, when I was there, were the Afghan commandos. They were kind of the select from the Afghan army. They'd been screened out originally. They were a little bit better educated, more motivated, better disciplined, and then received additional training. So my partner force, when I was there, were exceptional fighters and an exceptionally effective organization. The Afghan army as a whole, I think a lot of people have been kind of dragging them pretty badly over this last week, saying that they just immediately cut away and ran. And that's not entirely fair. 66,000 Afghan soldiers died over the course of the war, fighting and meeting the enemy. What seems to have fallen apart is kind of the backbone or the infrastructure behind that army, the logistical support, the ability to continue fighting further away from the capital as we withdrew our support.
So recently today, we saw a situation where there was armed conflict, where some of this stuff that has been total chaos has turned into certain, fire, for lack of a better way of putting it. Does that lead to something else? Does it take the escalation to a whole nother point?
Well, I mean, anytime that there's something like this going on, this tense situation where the dynamics have shifted suddenly, now we're negotiating or at least coordinating with former adversaries, emotions are running high, the people there themselves are desperate to get into the airport. That's a lot of tension. There's a lot of potential for missteps. It's also important to remember that, the Taliban is not this uniform organization. It's made up of kind of smaller groups of fighters. So it's easy to see how maybe, one potential Taliban fighter may have taken action on his own, or a situation was misread. Luckily, it appears like this specific incident was handled quickly and that it may not be part of a larger escalation. But the danger is still there. We've heard, a lot of the national security professionals from D.C. talking about this threat from some of the other extremist organizations in Afghanistan besides the Taliban. So there is always the potential for escalation.
Yeah. Mike, there are certain things that I may try to ask you that I know you can't answer. Things that you even know that you can't answer because of the importance that you play still in many of the things that I'm sure you're being asked to do. That being said, when you were in Afghanistan, was it clear what your role was? And the reason I'm asking that is to find out if it was clear here, back in the United States, what your role was. Because it seems to me that if I would have stopped 10 people on the road and said, okay, we have soldiers in harm's way, and we've had them there for 20 years in Afghanistan, tell me what our goal was, I'm not sure I would have gotten the same answer or even any answer, Mike, which is why I ask you this.
So I currently am a visiting fellow at the National Security Institute, and I co-wrote an article with one of my other visiting fellows, Jennifer Caffarella, where we said that one of the problems in the war was we tried to do too much of everything. And the problem was the originally defined mission of preventing a future September 11th or another September 11th-like attack and seeking retribution against those who had conducted it. became difficult after Osama bin Laden and his close cohort slipped away to Pakistan. So then we started doing things we could. So a lot of the nation building efforts that we did, some of them were essential to try to create a stable Afghanistan, and some of them were just making good work where we could find places to make progress. Not all of it was productive, not all of it was needed. When I was there both times, it was on the tail end of the surge. So it was 2011, we were drawing down the surge that President Obama had ordered. And then in 2014, it was actually right as we were transitioning from the end of Operation Enduring Freedom to Operation Freedom Sentinel, which was the strictly advisor effort. In both of those cases, my specific role, I understood, it was to create capability with my Afghan partners, to make them more capable than they currently are so that they could continue to fight without us. I think that we were successful with the individual units, but the problem was the overall framework of a national integrated security apparatus that really could do logistics for itself. It wasn't necessarily the ability to fight, but it was integrating all of these functions.
I go back, though, to where we're at in the United States, because the reason to me that that's relative is irrelevant is because of the fact that now we look at it from the outside looking in and we make all these judgments. You pointed out earlier the price that the Afghan people paid for what was happening. I wish that was being said more. I wish that was being understood more, because it seems to me that, you know, for many people who think that, you know, they turned tail and ran, we forget the price they paid or the understanding of who they were taking on. And one of the things that I think people confuse, you know, civilians, people like myself, confuse is the Taliban versus ISIS versus, you know, what the overall goal was in the beginning, which I think a major role was, you know, finding Osama bin Laden, which was achieved. And so, you know, to really get a grasp or a handle on who there was there, the geography of the land, what they're up against and what you were up against, I'm just curious if you can give people a glimpse of that, a window into that.
Well, one of the things is there's no such thing particularly as a pure Afghan, so to speak. Afghanistan is a mixture of several groups. You have the Pashtuns in the south and the west. You have the Uzbeks and the Tajiks in the north. You have the Hazaras in the center. And this was kind of a loose confederation at its best of various entities, groups, tribes that agreed to live in this political dynamic that was left behind by the British Empire. When Afghanistan was probably its most effective, it was kind of a feudal confederation. It was kind of, the people in Kandahar didn't necessarily fall directly under the thumb of the people in Kabul, but they agreed to kind of kick upstairs a little bit. Much like, you know, like I said, feudalism in Europe, 1,000 years ago. I think that what we tried to create there was a little bit of a misfit for the environment and for what the people were used to. And a lot of times I think we confused democracy for legitimacy as opposed to what is the legitimate form of local governance that the Afghan people are used to. One of the reasons, the Taliban's horribly repressive. The Taliban are not, cuddly people who naturally win people over with their sunny disposition. But there are some functions that they provided better than we did. And one of those was local governance and adjudication of disputes. One of the key complaints that the Afghan people had was the legal system in Afghanistan was so slow and bureaucratic and corrupt, they could never get simple decisions in disputes between neighbors or anything like that. And the Taliban, when they would come into a village or a region, they would come in with their judges and they would dispense justice that was seen as legitimate. It may not be, like I said, the cuddliest form of justice, but it was seen as legitimate because they would quickly deal with the problems that were at hand. So trying to lay over top of this multi-ethnic environment where you had, some harsh terrain with a system that made sense to us, but not necessarily to the people that were there, I think is one of the reasons why we saw an Afghan army that we tried to build to look like ours fall apart at the national level.
So as you see this I mean, we're moving out of Afghanistan. One way or another, we're pulling the pin, no matter what happens. And you know, candidates have said we've got to do this. Presidents have said we've got to do this. The Biden administration is the first president that just flat out said we're going to do this and we're going to do it by a certain deadline. I don't want to put you in a position of criticizing any U.S. president with the position that you have. When you take a look at how this physically can work, how we could have gone about this, in just the execution of administration, do you think that the Afghan people would have understood that they would have got it, that they would have understood the process of what would have had to happen?
Well, I think we're having a very robust debate right now in the United States about kind of the aftermath of this decision. And I think the president can look to some of the polling that suggested that the majority of the American people wanted to withdraw from Afghanistan and say that that was the decision. That was one of the reasons he made that decision. And obviously, you know, the president as the commander in chief has the full authority to make that decision. But we hadn't really talked about the war for years. It hadn't been a topic in a presidential debate, or at least between in the general election, in 2 election cycles. So we'd been at war for almost 10 years without a lot of people really getting involved in a rigorous debate about what our interests were, why we were there, if we wanted to leave. So I think in future, as we kind of shape foreign policy, it requires the American people to be involved in that, expressing what their interests are and what they expect their leaders to do on their behalf. But going forward, I think that it's going to be difficult for us to look at our Afghan partners and see how we're going to get everybody out in this sufficient time.
So I'm visiting over the weekend with an individual who wore the uniform of this country, very patriotic, very independent when it comes to his politics. He said, when I was wearing that uniform, you didn't question the commander-in-chief. You just didn't. That's what you did. You were called, and you did what you were called upon to do. When he looks at how all this is playing out now, he said, I'm not going to question him. I'm not. I'm gonna wait and withhold this process until the end. You mentioned poll numbers. You mentioned the American people. You mentioned how they're feeling. Is this something that we're all jumping to, a criticism that we're ahead of what could happen here?
Well, I think that there's, to go back to one of, I think, a lot of people's reference point for Afghanistan, the movie Charlie Wilson's War at the end. We'll see. There are so many unknowns yet to play out. Right now, it seems like we've increased our throughput at the airfield. It seems like we're getting a lot of the American citizens out. It seems like we're getting a lot of our Afghan partners out. There are still a lot of problems with people getting to the airport. I'm in communication with former Afghan friends who are still there, former partners. Some of my other friends are, and we're all exchanging information amongst each other to try to help move people through this process. And there are significant difficulties. It is not a smooth process right now. We also have to keep in mind right now, everything we're doing is at the goodwill, so to speak, of some very bad faith actors, and that's the Taliban. They are letting us do all this. If this were done in extremis, if this were done with active resistance, that would be a much more difficult prospect. So I think we don't yet know how well or badly this will turn out ultimately. But I do think we can look at some of the process errors along the way and say, these are some things we could have planned better.
So you mentioned Charlie Wilson's War, because there's a perception that is what, the Afghan situation was all about, that the situation with the Russians and how that played out. The equipment. I have to ask you this, Mike, because you understood the equipment that was on the ground in Afghanistan that's clearly going to be left behind. How dangerous is that in the future for the Taliban to have that?
Well, what they have is largely very tactical level stuff. They have Humvees, they have small arms, rifles, and things like that. They have some aircraft, but it's Black Hawk helicopters that could provide mobility. And they have what are called A-29 Super Tucanos, which are basically propeller airplanes that can conduct strafing and close air support for forces on the ground. None of this is cutting edge, anything that would be from a technological standpoint, a threat to a major army in a maneuver war. Now, is it bad that the bad actors have just upgunned themselves in terms of the number of weapons they have and the ammunition they have? Absolutely. But the specific capabilities they've gotten, it's really not probably something too significant.
Mike, when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about an American presence around the world. And what we do in other places. So stick around. We're going to continue this ride down the road.
Howdy, folks. It's a Caroline Cafe. I reckon it's time you're due for a hearty meal. So saddle up for the day with one of our Hey Bussin' breakfast homemade soups. Fill your grill at a salad bar. Sink your teeth into our famous Caroline burger and barbecue ribs. Top it off with spoon rattling pie with a calm roll that's sure to put a smile on even the toughest outlaws. Shake the dirt off the boots each night and warm up with the gang. Tell them about it, Stacy.
I can't wait to see you at the county line.
He once won a spelling bee in an ancient language that he did not speak. He is the only man to ever earn extra credit on an IQ exam. His academic degrees are considered legitimate spending currency in 22 nations, 2 principalities, and at Chick-fil-A restaurants in the United States and Western Canada.
I do not always engage with education programming, but when I do, it is the Dr. Duke Show.
Stay educated with the Dr. Duke Show, weekdays at 4 p.m. on Beck News.
Hi, Hunter Ellis here for Night Hero Binoculars by Atomic Beam. These binoculars let you see anything, even in pitch black darkness. Gotcha.
The secrets are powerful wide-angle atomic beam laser that reveals objects up to 150 yards away, hidden by darkness.
During the day, Night Hero gives you 10 times magnification. And when the sun goes down, press the Night Bright button to see clearly in the dark. Light up garbage-eating critters or spot thieves before they even get close. Call or click now and get Night Hero binoculars for just $39.99. Order right now and you can double it. Plus, get our best-selling atomic beam flashlight. Just pay a separate fee. We'll even ship them to you free. This TV special offer is not available on Amazon. You can get it all, but you have to order now.
Call 1-800-619-1091. That's 1-800-619-1091. Or visit bynighthero.com. That's bynighthero.com. Order now.
Attention, have you or a loved one suffered from maculopathy, a serious retinal injury, after taking the prescription drug Almiron for interstitial cystitis or bladder pain syndrome? In 2018, a researcher at the Emory School of Medicine linked Almiron, a prescription drug that treats interstitial cystitis or bladder pain syndrome, to maculopathy, which is sight-threatening and can cause an abrupt change of vision. Call Almiron Justice for a free legal consultation.
Please call 800-395-5680.
Non-attorney spokesperson. This is a paid advertisement for legal services sponsored by Nightline Legal. Cases assigned on a random basis to participating law firms.
This drug remains approved by the FDA. If you or a loved one regularly took Zantac and were later diagnosed with cancer, call right now. You may be entitled to financial compensation. Potential cancers include bladder cancer, colon cancer, kidney cancer, stomach cancer, liver cancer, pancreatic cancer. Do not stop taking a prescribed medication without first consulting with your doctor. Discontinuing a prescribed medication without your doctor's advice can result in injury or death.
Call 1-800-230-9210.
We were able to keep Mike Nelson in the rig and continue down the road here a little bit. Mike, one of the things that that I think needs to be asked by experts like yourself that were there is, could have we done this better? What should have we done? Is there anything out there that if somebody gave you the keys to this car, how you would have handled it?
So there are a lot of mistakes that we as a country and a coalition made, I think, over the course of the war. Some of them are easy in hindsight to look back and say, this was a mistake. But at the time, we have to recognize the decisions that were made at that time and why they were made. So one of the examples is in 2014, the presidential election in Afghanistan resulted in kind of a split decision between President Ghani and Abdullah. So there were very real tensions there that made us worried whether the government would continue to be able to withstand this transition to the advisor role that we were going to take. So we helped them broker a unity government, which was kind of a dysfunctional bureaucracy where you almost had co-presidents. You had kind of a president and then a chief executive who was almost as powerful as he was, that didn't necessarily trust each other. So that just continued to foster some of the dysfunction in the government. I talked a little bit about how we built an Afghan army that looked like the American army just over there, that we were trying to recreate the capabilities of an army that is capable of going somewhere else and fighting, as opposed to an army that can just secure the terrain of their local region or districts and provinces. And I think some of those were, decisions had to be made at the time, and we didn't necessarily think in advance how that would play out 15 years later, because we didn't think we were going to be there 15 years later. But those were definitely decisions that we made early on that kind of hindered us later. And then as we got close to this, going through the peace process, so to speak, with the Taliban, continually, I don't think it was necessarily a mistake to try to reach out to them, but continuing to trust them after multiple breaches of those negotiated settlements, continued breaches of the ceasefire and failing to live up to their side of the bargains. It seemed like we spelled the keys to demise there.
Well, I want to talk about that a little bit because there's plenty of finger pointing going around. And of course, you got the Sunday morning talk shows where people are in full, I want to be the next president kind of cover up mode. Now, that's my bias. That's not one that is associated with you. That being said, we're withdrawing the troops at the same time that we are negotiating with the Taliban. How were the Afghan people in the army that was being developed for a number of years by the U.S. supposed to deal with that? I mean, should we have been as surprised as what we were when it comes to how quickly this happened?
Well, one of the key considerations that we have to keep in mind, particularly when we talk about what the Afghans did or didn't do, when we entered into negotiations with the Taliban, the original statement of the United States was we wanted it to be three-party negotiations. The U.S., the Taliban, and the Afghan government. The Taliban initially balked at that and said, no, we're going to start with two-party negotiations, Taliban and the U.S., and maybe later we'll welcome the Afghan government in, but we don't recognize them as a legitimate government. And we agreed to those terms, and then we continued to negotiate without our Afghan partners in the room. So we made certain guarantees on behalf of the coalition and the Afghan government without them even being a party to those agreements. One of the most famous ones was the Taliban demanded the release of 5,000 prisoners. The Afghan government was holding Taliban prisoners. And we kind of leaned on our partners and asked them to release those 5,000 prisoners so that we can continue to negotiate. So before, we keep, like I said, a lot of people have maligned the Afghans in this. We have to remember they kind of got backed into a corner that they didn't have a certain say-so in where that corner was or what it looked like.
But that's my point. When you try to reinvent history and what happened in all of it, there were plenty of people on both sides of the aisle that at that time said you don't negotiate with the Taliban. You can't trust them. Now they're saying you can't negotiate with the Taliban, only they're the same people that were negotiating with the Taliban. So you sit there and it's like, look, if you're the American citizen and you really don't have a bias in any of this, you're just taking information and weighing it based upon the administration. It seems to me that whatever that message is, it isn't clear. It isn't clear of what should have happened. You've got what season you should be fighting. Obviously, in Afghanistan, you've got a situation of you need allies, but yet those allies feel betrayed because of negotiations with Taliban. Now, you've got an administration now that believes what they're doing in negotiating with the Taliban to get everyone out. It raises the question, should we be trusting them now? Or is this even going to get worse?
Well, as far as trusting the Taliban, once again, unfortunately, we are in a position where, to a certain extent, it's our only course of action. We are doing our evacuation operations with the recognition of the Taliban. Now, it's in their interest. They are more than happy to watch us go. I think so. I think it's in their interest to sit back and let us evacuate people. What's unknown is how long that will stay that case. If we try to push past the August 31st deadline, will they continue to acknowledge that? The other thing is, I think when you look at the American way of war, that we have a history of fighting wars, we're not really used to wars that last much longer than administrations. So while we can tack back and forth on domestic policy sometimes with different administrations, it is difficult, I think, for us if we're not having that rigorous conversation as a whole country of what our interests are in a certain war. It's difficult to kind of maintain focus and direction while you continue to navigate, multiple different presidencies. World War II was fought largely, short of FDR's death, with one president. The Civil War was fought with one president. World War I was fought with one president. It's kind of an anomaly where these ones that we look at as kind of dirty wars of insurgency, Vietnam, Afghanistan, that cross over these multiple administrations.
Mike, last question, I promise. Do you feel that your time in Afghanistan was wasted?
No. Now, I answered that quickly. It's a little bit complicated than that. The reason we went to war was, I see a lot of chatter these days about people saying, oh, we never should have gone, or I never supported it. I think that's a fallacy. Everybody understood at that moment that we'd been attacked, that those who had attacked us were still a viable force, and that those who were hosting and sponsoring them were not going to give them up. I think that obviously we could have fought the war better. It's tough right now. I'm sitting here in Arlington, Virginia, a mile away from the National Cemetery where two of my former soldiers are buried, who died fighting in Afghanistan when we were there in 2014. And that it is complicated and it is tough. And I talked to my fellow veterans, and we're grappling with what those losses meant. But I think for me personally, what I take solace in is thinking that for 20 years, some Afghans had a chance. For 20 years, and some of them are getting out now. Some of them got out earlier. Some of them were able to have opportunities for 20 years that maybe they might lose some of that under Taliban oppression, but they had some chance that they otherwise would not have. And we did achieve the goal. While we didn't achieve our long-term goal of a sustainable Afghanistan, we did achieve the goal of pushing the organization that had attacked us from its safe haven. Now, they're still there. They still exist, but not in the size and force that they did. So we'll see once again, going back to the Charlie Wilson's quote, we'll see.
Yeah. Mike, thank you. And thank you for your service. I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me.
When we come back, former United States Senator Kent Conrad, as we continue driving down the road.
From Lambeau Field to your living room. Catch all the Green Bay Packers preseason games exclusively on Beck Sports. Available on KRDK, KNDB, or KNDN TV. The Pack take on the Houston Texans August 14th, followed by the New York Jets August 21st, and end off the preseason with the Buffalo Bills August 28th. Check Beck.Sports to find more scheduling and local channel information.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, and as you know, my passion is to help each and every one of you get the best sleep of your life. That's why I created my new Giza Dreams bed sheets. The first night you sleep on my sheets, you'll never want to sleep on anything else.
Go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen right now to get your very own MyPillow Giza Dream Sheets. When you buy one set of sheets, you'll get another set absolutely free.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit MyPillow.com.
Introducing the Cool Turtle, the ultra-comfortable mask enhancer that creates a protective, cool, and breathable space between your mask and your face. Simply slide under any mask or gaiter and immediately feel the refreshing pocket of air surrounding your face. Cool Turtle's ergonomically designed, soft, comfortable shell immediately reduces mask friction, allowing you to breathe and talk in a comfortable environment.
I can actually breathe. With the Cool Turtle, no more sweating.
It's like I don't even have a mask on.
Call now and get not one, not two, but 3 Cool Turtles for just $10. Order now and we'll send you 2 more Cool Turtles free. No fees, absolutely free. Plus, you can get a 10-pack of 4-ply face masks. Just pay a separate fee. This offer is not available on Amazon. Get the real Cool Turtle now.
Call 1-800-270-1219. That's 1-800-270-1219. Or visit getcoolturtle.com. Order now.
Seniors, are you aware that you could pay less for your car insurance?
Seniors can save money on their car insurance.
You might save a little, you might save a lot.
Maybe hundreds of dollars a year.
You might save 5% a year, maybe 10%, 15%, or even more.
That's a lot of money.
So call right now and find out just how much money you might be able to save.
1-800-699-0761. 1-800-699-0761.
I'm Rick Becker from No Apologies. Welcome to your after hours oasis of sanity. How can these people not see that they're just clowns?
We help simplify and educate you on things going on in the legislature and around the country.
Asking the hard-hitting questions.
But also having Lee Stack and Sid and Marty Croft stuff, and we've talked about that sometimes. It's bad.
Watch us weeknights at 9 Central on Beck News and online at beck.news.
Everyone knows that I've been active in politics, albeit on a very small level, state Senate level, and nowhere near who and what our next guest did. But when you look from the outside in and you look how people reacted and you look at what they did and the dedication they had, a man that was a mentor to me and that I have such tremendous amount of respect for. In fact, I tell Heidi all the time, he's my favorite United States Senator ever. That is United States Senator Kent Conrad. Senator Conrad, good to have you coming down the road with us.
Thanks, Joel. Very nice of you to say.
You know, here's the thing. You are a budget hawk. You always have been a budget hawk. You gave up your seat in the United States Senate when you didn't meet the goal you had set of a balanced budget. When you look at what's happening under the administration, and I'm not trying to be partisan here as much as what I'm saying, the recent administrations, it appears that what's in the checkbook doesn't matter with how much they want to spend, Senator Conrad. And so how do you get your arms around that? I've got grandkids. I don't want to have to pay off my debt.
You know, for somebody like me who does believe deficits and debt matter, although they don't matter in the immediate future, they matter in the long term. And so we've seen Republicans and Democrats abandon the notion of fiscal responsibility. Although I will say, to Biden's credit, these spending proposals that he's advanced, he has also advanced the means of paying for them. So at least that's going in the right direction. But, you know, I'll tell you, in the Congress, Republicans and Democrats, they'll tell you the interest in balancing budgets is not a high priority. And, you know, it's understandable in the midst of a pandemic that you don't balance a budget. That's when you don't balance a budget. That's when you spend to make sure the economy doesn't go into a depression. So I will absolutely support them in that. But longer term, we've got to get back on track.
I want to talk about the toughest job in government today. We can talk about Joe Biden in just a second, your friend and former colleague. But one of the toughest jobs in policy today is Nancy Pelosi's. She has such a diverse caucus and such a small majority. And some of that small majority doesn't believe or adhere to what you just said. They don't. They want to see money spent just like a sailor on leave. And so if you're Nancy Pelosi, how do you get your arms around that?
It's extremely difficult. Look, I have high regard for Nancy Pelosi. I've seen her up close and personal. I know a lot of people don't like her for partisan reasons, perhaps personal reasons. I've worked with her. I found her to be extraordinarily responsible and somebody that did believe long-term you've got to have fiscal balance. So what do? I mean, the extremes in our country, and by that I mean the right and the left, seem to have almost no interest in working with the other side. They seem to have almost no concern about balancing budgets. They seem to have almost no concern about the fiscal future of the country. So I would say anybody dealing with the extremes of the left in our party, the right in the other party, they've got their hands full.
Okay, so you had the opportunity there, and I'm glad, to give people a window into Nancy Pelosi and the job that she did and is doing now. What about Joe Manchin? You served with Joe Manchin. You know Joe Manchin inside and out. There's a lot of criticism from the left and the Democratic Party of Joe Manchin. I'm curious what he was like as a colleague.
Well, first of all, Joe Manchin's a friend of mine. I have high regard for Joe Manchin. Those who criticize him within our party should think twice. Joe Manchin has held a seat as a Democrat in a state that went for Trump by 30 points. Hello? Is anybody paying attention? We would not have the control of the United States Senate if Joe Manchin had not found a way to win election in the state of West Virginia, which is overwhelmingly now Republican. Used to be overwhelmingly Democrat. So those who criticize Joe Manchin do so from the safe havens of districts that aren't competitive. And, you know, those people need to think very carefully about their words. Words matter.
I couldn't agree more. I want to get into a conversation, if we can, about your colleague, friend, and now President of the United States, Joe Biden, and the hits he's taking on this Afghan issue and the removal of the U.S. from Afghanistan. Give me your overall take on what you see playing out on the TV.
Well, first of all, I think he made the right decision about getting out of Afghanistan. You'll recall Trump made exactly the same decision. Trump negotiated with the Taliban and reached an agreement with them to withdraw all U.S. forces by May of this year. Biden came in and extended that to August of this year. So he actually extended our stay in Afghanistan. Look, if the Afghan people aren't going to fight for themselves, we can't continue to wage their battles. We can't continue to lose our precious lives, our precious treasure. So the overall decision, I think, is the right one. The implementation of the decision is terrible. And look, Biden is a friend of mine, but Joe Biden has made a hash of getting out of Afghanistan. So I hear people say, well, anytime you leave a country after you've had a long occupation, it's chaos. That's true. But rarely have you had the chance to control when you leave. Usually when you're leaving in these situations, you don't have control over the timing. In this circumstance, we had control over the timing, and there was clearly no serious plan. There should have been a plan to get each and every American out of there safely. There should have been a plan to get each and every Afghan who helped us in that troubled region get out safely. I've been working for the last 48 hours to try to help the family of a man who served as an interpreter for the United States Marines for 4 years in Afghanistan. He's out. He's now an American citizen. His brother, his nieces, his nephew, and his brother's wife are still there. They're scared to death that if they're found, they'll be killed. His brother worked with USDA, United States Department of Agriculture, to develop agriculture in Afghanistan. These people helped us. It is absolutely unconscionable that we didn't have a plan to get them out safely. So I must say I am angered by what I see as a failure to plan. Once a decision was made that you're going to get out, you got an obligation, an absolute obligation, to have a plan to get out all Americans and to get out those who have helped us.
Former United States Senator Kent Conrad from North Dakota, a man that was respected on both sides of the aisle. We're going to continue that conversation when we come back here down the road.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, and as you know, my passion is to help each and every one of you get the best sleep of your life. That's why I created my new Giza Dreams bed sheets. I started by using the world's best cotton called Giza. It's only grown in a region between the Sahara Desert, the Mediterranean Sea, and the Nile River. It's ultra soft and breathable, but extremely durable. My Giza sheets also include full 21-inch wide pillowcases that will fit over any pillow and deep pocket sheets that will fit over any mattress. The first night you sleep on my sheets, you'll never want to sleep on anything else.
Go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen right now to get your very own MyPillow Giza Dream Sheets. Giza Dream Sheets are available in a variety of colors. Use your promo code, and for a limited time, when you buy one set of sheets, you'll get another set absolutely free.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit mypillow.com.
Non-attorney spokesperson. This is a paid advertisement for legal services sponsored by Nightline Legal. Cases assigned on a random basis to participating law firms.
This drug remains approved by the FDA. If you or a loved one regularly took Zantac and were later diagnosed with cancer, call right now. You may be entitled to financial compensation. Potential cancers include bladder cancer, colon cancer, kidney cancer, stomach cancer, liver cancer, pancreatic cancer. Do not stop taking a prescribed medication without first consulting with your doctor. Discontinuing a prescribed medication without your doctor's advice can result in injury or death.
Call 1-800-230-9210.
Seniors, are you aware that you could pay less for your car insurance?
Seniors can save money on their car insurance.
You might save a little, you might save a lot.
Maybe hundreds of dollars a year.
You might save 5% a year, maybe 10%, 15%, or even more.
That's a lot of money.
So call right now and find out just how much money you might be able to save.
1-800-699-0761. 1-800-699-0761.
Hi, it's me, Anthony Sullivan. And yes, you've actually caught me at home relaxing because life's been pretty worry-free since I got coverage with American Residential Warranty.
You won't believe what ARW covers. Heating and air conditioning, washers and dryers, kitchen appliances, plumbing, water heaters, electrical systems, flat screens and laptops, even pools and spas, and so much more.
Call American Residential Warranty. They'll get you covered.
1-800-219-1467.
At Beck Communications, we've been planning for your future. Over the past decade, we've placed nearly 200,000 miles of dedicated fiber optics in the ground, enough fiber optic strands to circle the world 8 times. Taking no shortcuts, we connected every home and business in our service area with dedicated fiber optics. It's your personal, unrestricted, unthrottled connection to the world. Best of all, this dedicated fiber means you do not share your connection. We call this intimate dedicated connection Beck Fiber.
I'm trying to think of a statewide election that Kent Conrad lost. And I don't think there was one. If there was, he can correct me. But he certainly was someone that we all voted for here in North Dakota in a Republican state himself. And we voted him as a Democrat. We're going to continue our conversation with him. Senator Conrad, dates. I want to talk about dates. When President Biden said we were going to pull out by X date, when President Trump said we're going to pull out by X date, that just seems, from me, from the outside looking in, and I said this then, that it makes absolutely no sense. And I want to hear your side of that.
Well, every time there was a negotiation, I opposed setting firm deadlines, setting a date, setting a time frame, because it almost never works out. And then the issue is you failed to achieve the date. So look, Trump made the initial mistake here. He agreed in negotiations with the Taliban that he would get out in May. It is just a big mistake. Then Biden made the commitment to get out this month. You should, if you're going to negotiate, you should say, yes, you'll be getting out. You'll be getting out in a timely way, but never specify a date, because that becomes a portal that they can rally around and do everything they can to disrupt and deny. Look what's happening at the Kabul airport. It is an absolute nightmare. People being killed trying to get out. I am trying to help. Went to Kabul airport yesterday. Little kids, mother and father, And there was such violence and such chaos, they went home. And, you know, they live in stark terror that they're going to be killed. So, I mean, I must say I get angry thinking about what's occurred there. It's inexcusable. It is absolutely inexcusable. Part of that is setting a date.
No question about that. Senator, I want to talk a little bit about whether or not the bad that you just mentioned can turn into good in this sense, that time, you know, you're the person and the family, you're working so hard to get out of Afghanistan, that goal is achieved, that we end up using commercial aircraft, military aircraft, that yes, it's a mess in the beginning, but in talking to the Taliban, they want us out of there as much as anyone wants us out of there, that in the end there comes to some level of order when it comes to this. Could you see a scenario like that?
Well, only if those who resist Taliban takeover, and I'm talking about the forces in northern Afghanistan, Mahmoud and his allies, who are forcibly resisting the Taliban. Only if the Taliban becomes convinced that the only way to power is for them to negotiate and to soften the extreme nature of their policies and demands. That's the only way I see any kind of a good ending. Look, Afghanistan has been a wrecking place for one country after another. It was a disaster for the Russians. It was a disaster for the British. It was a disaster for the French. You know, nobody who's gone in there has had a happy ending. Nobody, because it's a tribal society. They are living in the far past, and they are totally unprepared to engage in modern life. And so anybody that goes in there is probably going to have a bad experience.
Before you and I got into this conversation, I spoke to an Afghan veteran, an individual who had served 2 tours in Afghanistan. I asked him, the very last question I asked him was whether or not he thinks his time there was wasted, that he feels, whether or not he feels the U.S. wasted its time and resources. He was quite clear that the answer was no, absolutely not. And the reason he gave was because of the fact that for X number of years, we gave Afghans the opportunity for peace, freedom, and the ability and the knowledge to do that. I'm curious whether or not you would answer the same way.
Yeah, I would, and I would. Interestingly enough, in some of the same, with some of the same sentiment. Look, Lucy and I have been contributing to a university in Afghanistan for women. First chance women had a chance to go to university. A very dear friend of ours has been on the board of that institution, and for a time was chairman of the board of that institution. And, you know, she shared with us every year the stories of the women having an opportunity to get educated. And, you know, that is not going to be lost. People have had an opportunity to experience what it is to be free, what it is to have a chance to be educated, not just men, but women, what it means to have a chance for opportunity. And those lessons, I do not believe, will be lost. Now, they may be shoved down, they may be pushed to the side by the extreme nature of this Taliban regime. But I'm very hopeful the Taliban are going to have to negotiate and soften some of their policies, especially the way they treat women.
So we get to a point where the United States of America, you've got a huge number of people that are critical of Joe Biden that say, look, you need to get these Afghans out of there. These were our allies. But yet, you ask them one more question, which is, are you willing to accept them into the United States? Are you comfortable with them being your neighbors? And then the hypocrisy really shows up. So what happens with the Afghan people that we take out of Afghanistan with the attitude that we have in this country on the conservative right side?
Let me just say this, shame on those people. Look, the family that I'm trying to help, the young man that was an interpreter for the United States Marines for 4 years in Afghanistan on the front, okay? He was in harm's way virtually every day. This young man is now a caretaker for an American, somebody that you know, actually. This young man is his caretaker. I won't identify him because I don't want to give the Taliban any clues to who the family might be I'm trying to help. But this is somebody that you know, and a very well-known North Dakotan, that this guy is a caretaker for. He is a solid citizen in every way. We're lucky to have him in this country. And he stood with us at the most traumatic time when we were going after Osama bin Laden, who had attacked us on 9/11. Hey, these are our allies. They stood with us. They fought with us. Many of them died with us. So, hey, they deserve respect.
The one thing, and I hope we can have another conversation another day about infrastructure, because you as a fiscal hawk were never afraid to have a conversation about the role of government, roads, bridges, water, sewer, those type of things, and this infrastructure bill that is making its way through. And to me, the liberals on the House side need to accept, and the conservatives on the House side need to accept as well, is a huge, great piece of legislation. That's my personal bias. And so, please answer when we call again, because I'd love to get a chance to get your take on that, Senator Conrad.
Yeah, this is something I care deeply about. I fought very hard for a package about this size in 2008 as part of the rescue package. I wanted to have the infrastructure package be much bigger, much bolder, to help us recover, not just in the short term, but to improve our competitive position in the world over the longer term. So be happy to have that conversation.
Senator, say hi to Lucy from all of us here in North Dakota. I appreciate you taking the time.
Be well. Thanks, Joel.
Senator Kent Conrad. When we come back, some closing thoughts about whether or not Donald Trump can get people to get vaccinated. Stick around. We'll keep going down the road.
Do you worry about going to the dentist? After all, a visit to the dentist can easily cost $2,000 or more. Well, relax. The Carefree Dental Card is now available in your area. Call now and we'll send your actual card at no cost today. With the Carefree Dental Card, you go to the dentist whenever you need and you instantly pay a lot less. Activate your card and you can start using it immediately. From exams and cleanings to more expensive procedures like crowns, dentures, even braces, they're all included with the Carefree Dental Card. Say you go to the dentist today without any card and your bill is, well, ouch. Wait a minute, let's try that again. You go to the dentist today and show your Carefree Dental Card, you save $525. The Carefree Dental Card is just $15.95 a month, so call now and make going to the dentist carefree.
Call 1-800-416-5739 to receive your Carefree Dental Card information kit. 1-800-416-5739. Call now.
I can't say enough good things about these nano hearing aids.
Real people talking about nano hearing aids.
The hearing quality is great.
Until now, hearing aids used to be too expensive for the average person. Until nano. Call now and you'll get your nano hearing aids for only $297. You'll save $100. When you buy one hearing aid, Nano will give you a second hearing aid free. Call right now.
1-800-213-3815.
Spas, etc. Yeah.
You've come to know and trust us for over 18 years with the largest selection and showroom in Western North Dakota for our beautiful Sundance spas. Plus, you can pick out your next home experience with our selection of pool tables, shuffleboards, and fun accessories.
Spas, etc. Your relaxation destination on Maiden Bismarck.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, inventor of MyPillow. Thanks to your support, you've helped make MyPillow become one of the fastest growing companies in America. Over the last 12 years, you've helped MyPillow create thousands of jobs right here in the USA.
When I got MyPillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
That's why I invented MyPillow. My patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs and helps keep your neck supported and aligned. I'm interrupting this commercial right now. Retailers have canceled MyPillow, and to thank you for your support, I'm going to pass the savings directly on to you. For example, you get my 6-piece towel sets, regular $109.99, now only $44.98, or MyPillow dog beds for as low as $19.99 with your promo code.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit mypillow.com.
You know, I get the privilege of being with you here on Beck News and on my radio show and getting a chance to lean into a microphone and give you my thoughts many times and bring people to you to give their thoughts. I have said time and time again that President Trump, former President Trump, would wield the most power when it came to that constituency, which is the constituency that has been anti-vax, that has been out there and said, you know what, I'm not going to get vaccinated. Well, the president was in Alabama, the former president, Donald Trump, and he had this to say about being vaccinated.
And it's great. And you know what? I believe totally in your freedoms. I do. You got to do what you have to do. But I recommend take the vaccines. I did it. It's good. Take the vaccines. But you got, no, that's okay. That's all right. You got your freedoms. But I happen to take the vaccine. If it doesn't work, you'll be the first to know, okay? I'll call up Alabama. I'll say, hey, you know what? But it is working. But you do have your freedoms. You have to maintain that. You have to maintain that. And you got to get your kids back to school.
Did anyone ever think a huge portion of a crowd at a Donald Trump rally would boo him? That's what you were hearing in the background. They booed him. He pivoted, started talking about their freedoms, all of that. Pointed out that it worked with him, that he has been vaccinated. And yet they booed him. In other words, I'm not so sure I was right. In other words, I don't know if Donald Trump has the power to have these individuals get vaccinated. I do know this. Today, the Food and Drug Administration approved the Pfizer vaccine. So for those individuals who are going around saying, I'm not going to get vaccinated because the FDA hasn't approved it, they no longer have that excuse. So the big question you have to ask yourself, and you get to ask them, is what excuse are they going to use next? Get vaccinated. Good riding with you, folks.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, and as you know, my passion is to help each and every one of you get the best sleep of your life. That's why I created my new Giza Dreams bed sheets. I started by using the world's best cotton called Giza. It's only grown in a region between the Sahara Desert, the Mediterranean Sea, and the Nile River. It's ultra soft and breathable, but extremely durable. My Giza sheets also include full 21-inch wide pillowcases that will fit over any pillow and deep pocket sheets that will fit over any mattress. The first night you sleep on my sheets, you'll never want to sleep on anything else.
Go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen right now to get your very own MyPillow Giza Dream Sheets. Giza Dream Sheets are available in a variety of colors. Use your promo code, and for a limited time, when you buy one set of sheets, you'll get another set absolutely free.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit MyPillow.com.